This is a short video sequence to help you reset the pelvis, to engage your core muscles and feel a little more stable in your foundation, in your base. And so we're going to begin, all right, on our mat with the knees just slightly apart, comfortably. And I want you to visualize where your pelvis is in space. And feel for a moment that the pubic bone lines up to the tailbone and the sitting bones line up to one another. And imagine, right, a circle between each of those 4 points, like a clock face, right underneath you. And what we're going to begin to do here is just carve around that circle and try to isolate the movement in the pelvis. Right, so try not to get the legs and the ribs and the whole deal going, but just what does it feel like to move smoothly between these 4 points? Notice any stuck spaces. It could be stuck on a whole side. It could be perhaps stuck between one of the sitting bones and the tail. Try not to force the movement. Just breathe smoothly and try to begin to make that clock face, that circular shape, wider. So extending the arc of that circle, but still just isolating the pelvis. We're trying to, right, create more mobility, freedom of motion in the pelvis, and to renew a healthy glide between the pelvis and the sacrum. And we're going to reverse that direction, right? And notice what happens when you shift directions, right? Does it feel a little clunkier? Does it feel like the edges of the circle, right, kind of are diminished or flattened? Just notice it. And you're welcome to start a little breath work, breathing in through the nose. I'm going to recommend a gentle exhale out through the mouth, just kind of letting the breath go. And then we're going to pause in the center. And again, just notice where the sitting bones are. Notice the points between the pubic bone and tail. If you had to close your eyes, would the tailbone be off to one side or the other? Or can you really feel that straight line between the pubic bone and the tail? And that's what we're shooting for. And so from here, once again, you can just kind of rest your hands on the thighs, and we're going to move here from the tailbone first and tip the pelvis back. So we're moving between flexion and extension through the pelvis, right? A posterior tilt as we tip back, and an anterior tilt as we tip forward. And you want to feel these frontal hip points lift up and back. And so our circle becomes here, more of a lateral circle along the side bodies, right? Like a nautilus shell, right? So feeling that even though, right, we're tipping back and front, it's circular, right? We're creating a sphere here of movement, right? So it's a nice elongated arc, right? The tailbone's reaching down and forward. And then the pubic bone is lengthening the space between the pubic bone and the navel. And then we start to draw in a little bit more tone, right? Recruit a little bit more tone in the pelvic floor on the exhale, a subtle lifting and narrowing between, right, the sitting bones, a stretch, right, a hollowing and tone on our transverse abdominis. And it's on the exhale. And so there begins this visualization, using our imagination to visualize also a circle around the pelvis, a corset of support. And just twice more. You might feel a little tone, a little engagement in the hamstrings as the pelvis tips back. We want to try not to overuse the glutes. And then we're going to pause in the center. Check in. Maybe you're, having a deeper awareness at this point and kind of noticing what's happening a little further up on the body as well. We're going to anchor the hands, set the palms down, and walk the knees back so we're in our quadruped position. And from here, try to line up here the underside of the wrist to the underside of the armpit, right? To line up the front of the knees to the hip crease. And we're going to gently kind of stretch out the metatarsals and peel the toes back. That sets a deeper anchor, right? We don't feel like we're gripping quite as much. And we're going to once again just move through that flexion and extension through the pelvis. And feel like you are lengthening and stretching the abdominals as you move through this, right? So rather than feeling like that forward tilt is a release of the abdominals, we maintain just a little bit of tone, right? You can build it up into the spine and into the ribs, right? Changing the shape a little more fully, so that even as we tip the pelvis forward, we're supporting our lower spine. And it's an exhale to round. And an inhale to extend. And let's come back through neutral. Now imagine here a laser beam on that tailbone. Can we isolate the movement of the tail, making a circle with the tail? First clockwise, and then reversing it. And again, minimal movement through the rest of the spine and trunk. Be 4 to 6 in each direction. Just notice the movement. And then we're going to repeat it, but this time you can add a little more freedom of movement, a little more fullness of movement, right? And you're turning on a spit. So imagine from the crown, through the center of the body, out through the perineum, a straight line that we revolve around, right? And then we're going to reverse it, because then, with that awareness, we make this shape more spherical in nature, getting around the body, but with a great deal of organization. And then we're going to pause in the center. From here, we're going to uncurl the toes if that's possible for you. All right, but walk the legs together so we narrow up our midline here. And feel here the upper arm gently wrap in to one another. And feel here a lift in the back of the waist. So you have tone and energy in the low belly. Now imagine lengthening here through the crown, through the front of the throat. Set your gaze out in front of you a bit and slide your right leg back, hover and lift it. All right, now this right leg should be straight. We want to feel here a little more tone in our glute max, right? So a little more tone in our glute max. And then from here, we're going to slide the left fingertips forward. If we can't lift them off the mat, we leave them there. Otherwise, we lift through the back of the left shoulder head and see if you can, again, keep tone on the low belly, but stretch that front body out. Take a breath in and a breath out. And then lower here that left hand, lower the right leg, and then from here, without a hip hike, just gently slide the right leg out to the side. So the toes are going to line up to the hip crease. Now from here, we're going to peel the pelvis open to our right. You might feel a nice opening in that left hip crease. All right? Now imagine here you're still on your spit, so crown to perineum, lining the shoulders up, and then see if you can move that left shoulder blade forward and out through the right side of your chest wall. And feel here a lift, an energetic breath from the back of the body, middle of the chest, out through the front of the body. And then from here, reset that right hand and bring the right leg in. We're going to repeat it on the other side. So just balancing out here. We stretch the gaze forward, wrap the arms to the midline, extend the left leg, firm the left glute. And just feel here, you're going to feel a subtle sense of internal rotation on that left leg. Feeling the support and lift through the front of the body. Stretch your right fingertips forward. Leave them there. Feel a connection from the bottom of the right shoulder blade to the left glute. And if you can, just hover the wrist. And take a series of breaths here, right? What does it feel like today? Can we lighten the load, right? Imagine there's a hot plate under that left hand. Can we lighten the load, stretch the gaze forward, lift up out of ourselves, bring the hand down, bring the left toes down, and then here just moving in the joint space, right? Line the left toes up to the left hip, and here it's like we're gonna move into a posterior tilt, pulling that tailbone out on that left diagonal. Open the chest, right? And breathe into the spaces that are requesting some breath, movement, release. Take a breath in and a breath out. And then bring the left hand down, pull the left knee in. Now, you can keep the legs together on this next sequence. We're going to peel the toes under. All right, reset, make sure you have a nice measurement. Front of the knee lines up to the hip crease. You don't want to be back in a, preparation for a plank. And what I want to imagine here for a moment is that the spine is awake, it's alive, it's breathing, it's supporting us. We don't want to lose that tone and that support. And what we're going to do on our exhale breath is get a little tone, a contraction right below and behind the navel, and hover our knees without tucking the tail. So lengthen the tail back. Feel an ease in your hip sockets, so we're not overusing the psoas, which tends to tuck the tail under. And feel the lower abdominals working. See if you can shift forward to the tips of your toes and take 2 more breaths. Inhale. Visualizing that corset of support, wrapping from the back to the front. 1 more breath in. Exhale it out. Gently bring the knees down. Uncurl the toes and just settle the elbows down. You can come into a full child's pose if that's something that you like to do. And then just lengthen the arms, curl up, and sit up, right? And we're going to work a little bit more on stabilizing the pelvis, recruiting the transverse abdominis, right? And so we're going to come down to our spines, lengthen our arms out by our sides, and move as we did in that upright position through our posterior tilt and anterior tilt, right? And so firm into both heels, right? Imagine just a subtle pull towards the sitting bone, so you get a little tone on the hamstrings, keeping the legs still. As we exhale the breath out, we're going to tip the pelvis towards our mat. Lengthening here into the back of the waist, pulling the tailbone between the feet, right? Not letting the knees splay out, but again, isolating the pelvis. Feeling as you exhale, narrowing into the low ribs, connecting into our waist. And inhale, coming forward. Now you might not want to move into that forward tilt of the pelvis. If that's the case, you can just come back to neutral, where the frontal hip points and the pubic bone line up. On this one, I like to turn my palms to face up towards the ceiling, feeling a widening across the collarbones and the back body, anchoring through each shoulder, lengthening into the fingertips. Now the next time you tip that pelvis back, let's leave it there. Excuse me. We're going to turn the palms to face forward. And then we're going to curl up to the bottom of the shoulder blade. And just look at the shape of your abdominals. Do you see a big crest here? Being kind to ourselves, right? Do we see this big crest? Or do we feel that we're actually hollowing? You've got to use that ha breath, all right? Interlace the fingers at the webbing. Slide the hands to the center base of the skull. You're welcome to maintain this imprinted spine, right? And that's the goal, to not shift. Pelvis stays nice and still. We're building stability right here, right? And so as you exhale, it allows you to deepen into the low belly a little more. We're going to pull the right knee forward, noticing that nothing moves but the right leg. And then as we reach down, keep that right glute firm, all right?
Left side, exhale, contract a little deeper between your frontal hip points. Keep the back of the waist, ribs anchored. Pull the left knee forward. And then reach into the heel. Keep the glute engaged. Otherwise, we tend to overuse the hip flexor to get the leg down. Exhale. This time, we're going to interlace the fingers and hug the knee into the chest. Now, when we hug the knee into the chest, the tendency is that right hip likes to hike. So think of lengthening the right sitting bone forward, scooping it in towards that left inner thigh. So both sides of the waist are even in length. Now apply a little pressure from the knee into your hands and float up. Wrap the elbows in so you don't feel like your shoulders are up or the elbows are wide, tension there. You're holding yourself up, right, from under the arm, right? And a little pressure, knee into the hands. And can we extend the left leg? And our goal is to line up the heels. Here, taking a peek, seeing that the pubic bone, navel, center of the chest wall to the chin line up. Tone on the glute for support. Take a breath in. Exhale it out. And then if you can, we let it go, right? Feeling the reach and the slide of the shoulder blades down. And then we're going to bring the knees in and lower the head. Take a breath in. Right? So our knees are ready. We're just going to interlace the fingers, hug the left leg into the chest. And try to be honest with yourself because you're there by yourself probably, so it doesn't matter, right? All right, so try not to just pull the leg into the chest to get it into the chest, but rather keep the waist even in length. Keep the sitting bones level and really feel where that mobility is. For me this morning, this is it, all right? And then from here, I'm going to exhale and I'm going to curl up and I apply a little pressure from my knee into my hands. I light up the underside of the armpit and I'm going to extend my right leg forward. Tone on the glute. Otherwise, the pelvis tends to tip, the back arches. We don't want that. We want to plug it in and up, okay? And then really feel like you're rolling off the ribs. Bring the hands along your sides. 2 more breaths. And I can see this right heel could come down a little bit. Stretch the leg. Take a breath in. Exhale it out, and then slide the knees in and lower down. Take a breath in and just kind of check in with the body. Do the legs feel lined up? Does the pelvis feel lined up? Are the ribs over the pelvis? Where are we at, right? All right, let's repeat. So we're going to pull the right knee into the chest once again. Take a breath in. Maybe it feels a little easier this time. Take a breath out. And imagine just the hip socket melting and giving way to that leg. All right, then we're going to externally rotate this right leg. Pelvis and ribs still line up. We're going to pick the knee up. Right, now on this one, I really like to feel like I roll my weight towards my tailbone rather than towards my ribs. You're going to feel a lot deeper stretch there in the back of the hip. And you can reach through. And as you pull the leg to you then, you might feel the pelvis tip back and the spine flatten, and that's fine, right? Just kind of find your sweet spot. The intention of this stretch is to stretch out your external rotators, right? So deep in the right glute. Where do we feel that the most? And then we're going to lower our left leg, return the right leg to your tabletop, and stretch the right leg up to the ceiling, all right? Take a breath in, exhale, feel that corset of support, allow the pelvis to tip back, interlace the fingers at the webbing, and gently pull the right leg to you. Now, my leg is as straight as it can be. It might not look like it in these pants, but that's what we're shooting for, is a straight leg. So we're gonna firm right above this kneecap. From here, we're gonna punch that left heel out again, right? Square your shoulders. Again, pubic bone, navel, heart center, throat, chin, line up. We're going to bend the left knee, maybe come a little deeper into the stretch. You can even take your peace fingers, stretch the leg, and bring it down. Other side, left knee, interlace the fingers, hug the knee into the chest, take a breath here. Notice what happens with the right leg. Is it splaying out? Is the ball of the big toe anchored? Right, we're trying to prepare ourselves for standing movement. So this right leg is still active. There's a little tone on the glute, right? There's energy coursing through that right leg as well. We externally rotate, pull the thigh towards us. Again, you can interlace here. You can imprint the spine. Where do we feel, right? The deepest stretch, lengthening, right? Opening. Make sure to breathe. And then gently bring the right leg down. Stretch the left leg up towards 90. For some of you, that may be further back, further forward, interlace. Create a little pressure from the leg into the hands. Notice how that feels. If that feels like it creates a little bit more stability in your center. And float the head up and punching out through the right heel. Think of not moving forward, but pulling the energy up through the back of the right leg into the pelvis. Take a breath in and a breath out. And then when you're ready, bending here, the right knee, you can take peace fingers on this leg. Try to anchor the back of the left shoulder. Collarbones are wide. And then this time we're just going to bring the left leg back into tabletop. Use your breath. Tip the pelvis back through an imprint. Bring the right leg up to meet it. Lengthen your arms along your side bodies. Exhale, curl up to the bottom of the shoulder blade. From here, we're going to peel the toes back. Feel a little lightness through the tailbone. Support, right? Bubbling up through the pelvic floor. We're going to tap the right heel down. Exhale, breath. Inhale up. Now, if you don't like to keep your head lifted, you can always use blankets and just keep the head on the blankets. Prop yourself up high enough so that you don't feel tension in the throat or in the neck muscles, right? All right, you can always interlace the fingers at the webbing, hold the skull in the hands. All right, if you want to keep a nice keen eye on the abdominals, curl up, send your gaze along the low belly, right? And now from here, we are going to interlace here. And I want you to stretch through the toes and draw the knees towards you. Really hug it in. Take a breath in. Try to touch elbows to knees. And then gently wrap the hands behind the legs. Lower the head. Gently lower the feet. Turn the palms to face up. And take a breath here. Let the abdominals truly expand. And allow that expansion to be three-dimensional. So we're not only opening up the front of the body, we're opening, releasing, creating spaciousness in the back and side bodies as well, right? We want to be able to release, soften, stretch our abdominals as needed, right? So we're not always locking the abdominals. Let's take 2 more breaths. Pause at the top of that inhale. You might even feel like you create a little more expansion. You allow for a little bit more expansion. And last one. So we expand into the abdominal wall, the lower lobes of the lungs, the side bodies. Really try to feel that soft rise in the front of the chest wall. And then notice the anchors of the feet. Notice the anchor of the thigh bone resting in the hip socket. Notice the weight of the pelvis and back ribs. And allow the heart to rest and settle. Let the backs of the shoulders be heavy, the throat soften, and the back of the skull. Take a breath in and a breath out. You can rest here for a while, thanking your body for returning to its center. And that's all.
Thanks.